So today I want to discuss antinatalism and transhumanism, and specifically address an argument against antinatalism that we sometimes hear expressed by transhumanists. So transhumanism refers to quite a broad range of goals and interests, but in essence what the transhumanist believes is that we can and should improve human beings through the use of technology. And again, improving human beings can mean different things for different people. For some transhumanists, it might mean making humans immune to death. For others, it might mean sharpening certain capacities we have, for instance, allowing humans to see better, hear better, reason better, and so forth. But the type of transhumanism that I'm interested in here is the kind according to which we can and should remove every unpleasant sensation from conscious experience. In other words, transhumanists whose interest is in abolishing pain and suffering. It's important to note, too, at this point, that some transhumanists, or perhaps many transhumanists, extend their concern for suffering to include that of all sentient beings. And I think this is really the only consistent or defensible ethical position. Now, it may be useful to divide transhumanists of this kind into two further categories, namely optimistic and pessimistic transhumanists. So optimistic transhumanists we can understand as people who maintain either that life in general is already good, but that we can significantly improve it using technology, or that life will be good, so good that it is our moral obligation, in a sense, to ensure that our descendants exist to enjoy it. So I would call such transhumanists optimistic. The pessimistic transhumanists do not believe that life today is good, nor do they think that the future, even one without any disvalue, is worth the total pain and misery that will no doubt be experienced in the intervening period. They're pessimistic in this sense. But they may believe that transhumanism is the best way to reduce global suffering. Now, it's not surprising that an optimistic transhumanist will be opposed to antinatalism because, again, they believe either that life is already good or that the transhumanist's future will in some sense compensate all the bad that will be experienced in the intervening years. And so antinatalism simply gets in the way of this plan. But it's curious that many pessimistic transhumanists also have expressed opposition to, or at any rate don't see much value in, antinatalism. We're told by such people that, occasionally, that we'll never get everyone to accept antinatalism. We'll never eliminate suffering in this way. And therefore, we should abandon the cause of antinatalism and focus our attention on transhumanism. That is, rather than trying to get everyone to abstain from procreation, we should try to improve conscious experience and get rid of suffering this way. But I find this criticism mistaken, or in any case confused, coming from people who think that life is genuinely bad. I think the appropriate response in this case is not to say either we promote antinatalism or we promote transhumanism, but to say that we should promote both antinatalism and transhumanism. That is, why not encourage people not to create any suffering beings, while also supporting efforts, including transhumanist efforts, to reduce suffering for existing beings and beings who will exist in the future. So in order to make this thought more clear, suppose transhumanists discover a way, in theory, to completely remove any inclination from human beings to engage in murder. And these transhumanists, who obviously think murder is a bad thing, tell us that we can't stop everyone from engaging in murder through any great social or economic reform, education reform, and so forth. And so rather what we should do is to put our hopes in these future developments and abandon all of our present efforts, which after all are not going to eliminate instances of this behavior, whereas the transhumanist solution might. So there are a couple of things to say in response to this. First, there is no guarantee that such developments will ever amount to anything in practice. And second, even if they do, or we assume that they will, all the harm, in this case homicide, that will occur in the intervening period can potentially be significantly mitigated by present efforts. And I would respond to a transhumanist in exactly the same way about antinatalism. Namely, it's not clear, practically speaking, whether the transhumanist solution will ever work or happen in this respect. And even if we grant that it will, we should still do what we can to prevent people from creating suffering, creating beings who can suffer in the years preceding this transformation, if you like. Incidentally, the sense that people have that if we cannot eliminate or entirely prevent some evil for everyone, that all our efforts are wasted or insignificant, this feeling of powerlessness and just pointlessness arises, no doubt, from an awareness of the vast number of individuals involved in these global issues. I mean, when you have countless individuals being born, being wronged, being unjustly treated in all sorts of ways, it's tempting for us to think, how can preventing such evils for one individual matter? But this, I think, indicates confusion, and it's easy to see this if we imagine ourselves falling victim to such evils, or being spared these evils. We recognize this difference in ourselves. And so it's one thing to say that preventing a bad life or some significant harm for, let's say, 1,000 individuals is more significant than doing so for one individual. But it's another thing entirely to say that such a difference for a single individual is insignificant, which strikes me as plainly false. And put yourself in the position of that individual, and we see immediately the problem. The individual matters not in virtue of being part of an aggregate or a large group of individuals. Rather, the aggregate or group or community matters in virtue of being comprised of individuals. We should also keep in mind that children grow up and often have children themselves. Therefore, by not having a child, speaking specifically of human beings, and convincing others not to have any children, we are in effect preventing the possibility of a large number of individuals from being born. But again, we should never undervalue the importance of the individual. We recognize this importance in ourselves, and we should recognize it fully in others as well. So that is all for now, and thanks for listening.